Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we got ourselves a track from an ex named Joshua Offenberg titled Legendary White Boy. And if we switch over to here, we've got ourselves a track on the screen now. I assume this is the YouTube video for it, music video. We're going to listen through it from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it, let's go.
Girl, I'm not a little bit white boy.
Has no muscles, he has abs. Goes too big. 1 inch penis. Little girls don't like guys. White boy. He's so nice now. He chuckles like Quagmire. Girls don't mind.
It's incredibly intense. It's like, it's very kind of, it wants to do a lot of things at the same time.
The little dick white boy, they know that white boy gives him that crack. He's a supplier, really a liar. You better watch it, white boy. You gotta fuck with us. White he has abs. Now he has to pay. Little dick white boy.
No, this is the end. No, more like the beginning. Hey, coming out with Bella both before they're eating.
I'm just kind of, it is cool. I was just kind of checking that I didn't have two tracks playing at once.
What's I gonna do when he's watching from the crowd? I'm a student of the year, but his parents so they got to make the grades appear. Worlds are rigged with a neon grin, algorithm crowns in the mean king of sin. Whiter than the dust on a Pringle jet, but girls still watch his chaos clips. The little dick white boy, little dick white boy, zoomed in stare like a cursed Madonna toy. His friends tag along.
Unironically, I do like the groove. I mean, I like the sound, and I apologize for pausing. It's just, it's an interesting song. Like, I appreciate when there's like one thing at a time. Just the peppiness of those double kicks, the kind of machine gun kicks is really cool.
Spreading like a virus through the
Is this like the track that we had before? I think this was the track we had before. Does like the TikTok overlay have like another track attached to it that we're kind of viewing in real time? Yeah, because like a potential use of this could be like in DJing when you blend, you know, you have two tracks that are at the same tempo or key signature, and you could probably get away with it if you have something that's kind of rapping and not being necessarily super colorful harmonically or melodically, and you could have another track that is, and so because one of them's not playing a chord progression or bass line, maybe it's just oscillating around a root note, you can have that track go well with another that does. Like, so that one that has a chord progression, one that doesn't. and you could maybe get rid of some frequencies off one track to allow room for the colorful track and maybe just have like the bass of another. I think that's a situation where you could maybe have both tracks kind of work together, but it just kind of feels a little bit askew in terms of how these two kind of go together.
Muscles, but he has abs. Purpose. Now he has to pay. Little dick white boy.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's an interesting experience. We're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. Because welcome to the conclusion of my track from an actor named Joshua Offenberg, titled Legendary White Boy. In this section, we're going to provide an overall song analysis of everything from lyrics and vocals all the way through to studio production, as well as any applicable constructive critique. And then finally, my general thoughts from a listener's perspective. But first of all, what do we think this track is about? It says Legendary White Boy, the legend of the white boy, but then we also talk about how they have a 1-inch member. So I'm assuming that it's maybe ironic and how girls won't grind on them and stuff like that. You know, like, he has no muscle, but he has a purpose. Now he has to pay. Now he chuckles like Quagmire. Isn't that crack? And you've got some songs where, like, or some parts of the track where there's like 2 tracks going over top of each other, and it becomes almost sort of like fever dreamish. In the sense that I feel like if you had the tracks individually, like sometimes they have both going, but if you have one or the other, you can kind of figure out what they're doing. It's just when you have both songs playing on top of the other and they're in different tempos, so therefore the vocals and the drums or all that are in different speeds. It's just kind of difficult to sort of like discern what's going on. Maybe this is the lived experience of the legendary white boy, what they're sort of figuring out. It's just maybe beyond what I heard and what I kind of got from the main listen through at 420, which is a nice reference. You effectively, you have a track, and it's definitely an experience. I think vocally, I can. You have some screams and growls there, and it's very kind of metal and it's brutal, and I like the tone and texture of it. It sounds kind of brittle but kind of gruesome at the same time. You have some other sung melodic parts there which kind of sound a bit stylized and tuned, and they're a bit more sort of colorful there, and they harmonize neatly with their respective parts. And there's some kind of rapped, kind of growly, kind of vocal fry and other bits as well, which is just a bit more kind of feral sounding, but it's kind of dope. I do like that kind of Whitechapel-ish approach to metal when it's done well. And you have some other parts, such as around like that, around that 2-minute 10 mark where the person's on their skateboard, you know, like that bit of vocal fry that you have there between some of the growl parts. It's just a lot of different styles of vocals that you have here. And even though it's a bit overwhelming sometimes, it is also still nonetheless an interesting listen. I think that sometimes the vocals kind of were over top of each other, but again, because they weren't the same tempo, you weren't necessarily sure how to approach it. Ultimately though, I think, you know, it's an interesting sort of like experiment, and if we are going for a more experimental sound, I totally found it. There's people that I know personally that might be interested in this kind of stuff because I really like their kind of avant-garde, sort of like extreme kind of stuff. So at the very least, it does keep your attention for the most part because of how kind of obtuse it is and how sort of unwelcoming it can be with the heaviness of it. You have a mixture of different elements within this, and amongst the different vocal intensities, tones, textures, and timbres, you have a lot of chug-chug guitars there, a lot of power chord elements there, some tremolo-picked parts there. You have a mixture of different percussive elements there, different kind of like, again, machine gun kick and snare fills and everything like that, and main sort of crash beats. And I do kind of dig the variety of different rhythms we have in there, like individually, in isolation. Some of the ideas in terms of from the percussion are kind of cool. And there's a nice kind of punchiness to how those kicks coalesce with those hi-hats and snares and stuff like that. And like there's these clicky kind of like galloping kind of kicks, like for example around like 358, which is just like huge sounding, you know, like it just sounds massive, and I like the energy around it. I do note that around the 38-second mark, when it's heavily distorting, it's almost like we've deliberately processed it to be kind of bit crushed, but it almost becomes more like the distortion itself as the main event. So that more or less kind of, I'm not sure why it's so distorted. There's also some moments like around the 1 minute mark where there's like a kind of repeated like kind of triplet oscillation or like LFO going on with some of the tone processing there, and it's just an interesting alternate rhythm. Like you've got quarters, eighths, triplets, and sixteenths within this. Ultimately, you know, like the different isolated ideas seem like they work together. It's just when they overlap that it gets a bit frenetic. There's even like around the 352 mark some keys that are kind of nice in that top end and they're nice and colorful. They have a synthetic feel to them, which kind of helps kind of work alongside some of the other sort of synthy textures within the track. There's even some sort of like heavily kind of like there's some machine gun snares and stuff like that, some gravity blasts around the 12-second mark, which is kind of dope. And amongst the kind of beat boops of other parts, which are a little bit kind of like unpredictable, and like with the pads and the way the track ends in a far more sort of gentle way than everything else, I'd leave this track not necessarily understanding the overall purpose for it, aside from maybe the different angles of the legendary White Boy, but I nonetheless feel like it's you know, like if this was played by human beings, especially the drum parts, that's absolutely ridiculous. And even if it wasn't played by human beings, because I've been sent through some stuff recently by people who have been using kind of like technology to try and make their tracks, it's still kind of cool to hear their sort of interpretations of how those kind of drums and middles should work. Thematically, this is minor leaning. I don't think this is a particularly happy, fond tale of the legendary White Boy, which, considering the subject matter, makes total sense. And I think you know, with the mixture of the diatonic predominantly with the minor key there, you're just left in a position where it's like, okay, I understand why this is kind of rolling with that kind of harshness of the distorted guitars and the drums and everything like that. There's a lot of anger and fear and sadness and just frustration with it, even if it's ironic. The studio recording, mixing, and mastering, I wasn't necessarily a massive fan of it. I feel like I don't mind when stuff's kind of crazy and all over the place and wacky, but I need to sort of understand why it is, and I feel like it needs to kind of have a connection to what's happening with some part of the song there. If this is someone going through a massive emotional roller coaster as they discuss the stuff within the track, that's one thing, but I feel like individually, the ideas with the way they were leveled were totally fine. There was a bit of push to the kicks. I don't know if the guitars were double tracked, and that's sometimes an issue, is that we need to record 2 different guitar takes on either side to make the rhythm guitars sound nice and thick and full. The vocals were processed in a way where you could kind of understand what they meant for the most part, aside from when they're in different tempos and overlapping each other. And effectively, you've just got you know, like a massive amount of dynamic range, whether intentionally or not, with the differences between the quieter parts, the kind of whispered, kind of more low-key vocals, to the more intense ones. So I kind of leave in a position here where I feel like it maybe would have been a better experience if everything had been at more similar volume, but at the same time, I think it would have ruined the purpose of the exercise. So it's kind of one of those bittersweet things where it's just their kind of artistic vision. I have to kind of respect that. But it is nice. It is loud to the point where it distorts. Bus compression limiting is handled. In terms of applicable constructive critique, I've more sort of like spoken about how things maybe needed to be the same tempo if they're going to overlap in order to blend more eloquently, and how maybe we needed to not have as much of a difference in the loudnesses between things. From a final general listener's perspective, this is probably one of the most unique tracks that I've heard in a while. Over the last like half a year or so, I've heard some really interesting songs. And sometimes they've been like a bit raunchy and a bit kind of intense, and other times they're more sort of just like kind of we're trying different things and seeing what sticks. I just feel like if we maybe stick to one main concept for the next track and then do the crazy up and down volume stuff, that might potentially be a little bit more sort of palatable, especially for a wider audience. But nonetheless, I wish everyone involved the best in luck in future with their tunes, because thank you for watching my review of this track from an axe named Joshua Offenberg, total legendary white boy, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please go show them some love via their various social medias and the YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world, and I'll catch you in the next XP Reacts. Spiderhands out.